fortified inner temple, where what remained of the city's once proud population was crammed like fish in a barrel, filthy, starving, reduced to eating rats and leather, and drinking their own urine, so pitiful was their thirst. Still they fought, frantically, hopelessly, raining rocks and flaming beams of wood down on the attackers below, occasionally sallying forth to drive the Romans back from the outer courts, only to be driven back themselves with terrible losses. The boy's two elder brothers had died in the last such sortie, hacked down as they tried to topple a Roman siege engine. For all he knew, their mutilated heads were among those now being catapulted back over the walls into the temple enclosure. "Viva Titus! Vincet Roma! Viva Titus!" The voices of the Romans swelled upwards in a roaring wave of sound, chanting the name of their general Titus, son of the Emperor Vespasian. Along the battlements, the defenders tried to raise a counter-chant, calling out the names of their own leaders, John of Giscala and Simon bar Giora. The cry was frail, however, for their mouths were parched and their lungs weak, and anyway, it was hard to muster much enthusiasm for men who, it was rumoured, had already struck a deal with the Romans for their own lives. They kept it up for half a minute, and then their voices slowly dropped away. The boy removed a pebble from the pocket of his tunic and began sucking it, trying to forget how thirsty he was. David was his name, son of Judah the winemaker. Before the Great Revolt, his family had worked a vineyard on the terraced hills outside Bethlehem, its ruby-red grapes producing the lightest, sweetest wine you had ever tasted, like sunlight on spring mornings, like a soft breeze through shady groves of tamarind. In the summer, the boy had helped with the harvest and the treading of the grapes, laughing at the feel of the mushy fruit beneath his feet, the way the juice stained his legs blood-red. Now the wine presses were smashed, the vines burnt down, and his family dead. All of them. He was alone in the world. 12 years old, and already he carried the grief of a man 5 times his age. "Here they come again! Ready! Ready!" Along the ramparts the cry rang out as a new wave of Roman auxiliaries poured towards the temple walls, scaling ladders held above their heads, so that, in the infernal shadowy firelight, it looked as if dozens of giant centipedes were scuttling across the ground. A desperate hail of rock showered down on them, causing the charge to falter for a moment, before sweeping onwards again, reaching the walls and raising the ladders, each one anchored by 2 men on the ground, while a dozen more used poles to heave it upwards and over against the battlements. Swarms of soldiers began scrambling onto them, streaming up the sides of the temple like a rising tide of black ink. The boy spat out his pebble, grabbed a rock from a pile at his feet, placed it in his leather sling, and leant out over the ramparts, looking for a suitable target, oblivious to the blizzard of arrows hissing up from below. Beside him a woman, one of the many helping to defend the walls, stumbled backwards, her throat pierced by a harpoon-headed pilum, blood spraying through her hands. He ignored her, and continued surveying the ranks of the enemy beneath, eventually spotting a Roman standard-bearer holding aloft the insignia of Apollinaris, the 15th Legion. He gritted his teeth and began swinging the sling above his head, eyes nailed to his target. 1 circle, 2, 3. His arm was grabbed from behind. He wheeled round, punching with his free fist, kicking. "David! It's me! Eleazar! Eleazar, the goldsmith!" A huge bearded man was standing behind him, a heavy iron hammer slotted into his belt, his head wrapped round with a bloodied bandage. The boy stopped punching. "Eleazar? I thought you were a Roman?" The man laughed mirthlessly, releasing his grip on the boy's arm. "I don't smell that bad, do I?" "I would have hit their standard-bearer," admonished the boy. "It was an easy shot. I would have smashed the bastard's skull." Again the man laughed, with more warmth this time.
I'm sure you would have. Everyone knows David Bar Judah is the best slingshot in the land. But there are more important things now.
He glanced around, then lowered his voice.
Matthias has summoned you.
Matthias? The boy's eyes widened. The man clamped his hand over the boy's mouth, again glancing around.
Quietly,
he hissed.
There are things here. Secret things. Simon and John would not be happy if they knew this was done without their consent.
The boy's eyes sparkled with confusion, uncertain what the man was talking about. The goldsmith made no effort to explain himself, simply looked down to make sure his words had hit home, then removed his hand, and taking the boy's arm, steered him along the top of the battlements and down a narrow stairwell into the court of women, the stonework beneath their feet trembling as the Roman battering rams punched into the temple gates with renewed vigour.
"Quickly," he urged. "The walls won't hold for long."
They hurried across the court, dodging the severed heads scattered on the flagstones, arrows clattering all around them. At the far end they climbed the 15 steps to the Nicanor gate, and passed through into a second open space, where crowds of Kohanim were furiously sacrificing on the great altar of holocausts, their robes stained black with soot, their wailing voices all but drowning out the rage of battle. "O God, thou hast rejected us, broken our defences. Thou hast been angry. O restore us. Thou hast made the land to quake. Thou hast rent it open. Repair its breaches, for it totters." They crossed this court too, and ascended the 12 steps to the porch of the Mishkan, its massive facade rearing over them like a cliff, 100 cubits high, and hung with a magnificent vine worked of pure gold. Here, Eleazar stopped, turning to the boy, and squatting so that their eyes were level.
"This is as far as I go. Only the Kohanim and the high priest may pass into the sanctuary itself."
"And me?" The boy's voice was unsteady.
"For you, it is allowed. At this time, in this extremity. Matthias has said so. The Lord will understand."
He laid his hands on the boy's shoulders, squeezing.
"Do not be afraid, David. Your heart is pure. You will come to no harm."
He looked into the boy's eyes, then, standing, pushed him away towards the great doorway, with its twin silver pillars and embroidered curtain of red, blue, and purple silk.
"Go now. May God be with you."
The boy looked back at him, a huge figure silhouetted against the flaming sky, then turned, and pushing aside the curtain, passed into a long pillared hall with a floor of polished marble, and a ceiling so high it was lost in shadow. It was cool in here, and silent, with sweet, intoxicating fragrance in the air. The battle seemed to recede and disappear, as though it was happening in another world.
"Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echud," he whispered. "Hear, O Israel, the Lord is our God, the Lord is one."
He paused a moment, overawed, then slowly started walking towards the far end of the hall, his feet falling soundlessly onto the white marble. Ahead of him stood the temple's sacred objects, the table of the shewbread, the golden incense altar, the great 7-branch menorah, and beyond them a shimmering, diaphanous veil of silk, the entrance to the Debir, the Holy of Holies, which no man could enter save the high priest alone, and he only once a year on the Day of Atonement.
"Welcome, David," said a voice. "I have been waiting."
Matthias, the high priest, stepped from the shadows to the boy's left. He wore a sky-blue robe bound with a red and gold apron, a thin diadem about his head, and on his chest the ephod, the sacred breastplate with its 12 precious